we think that this city cannot continue to harm children and destroy another generation of children as a result of these bad decisions.
If you go back to page 3 now, you will look at what we're talking about with the fund balances. And by fund balances, we mean this is, all of these numbers up through 2010 are audited figures. So, as you can see, through 2009, we were actually having surplus budgets that ended up with surpluses that were audited. So these are audited numbers, and in 2009 we had a $115.1 million in surplus.
Molly, just real quick, I just got to ask you, being a parent and a taxpayer, and not with the news, when did she arrive?
2010 year.
Okay, and isn't this like popping out as a big, I mean, we're at a negative 3.5. This is our first year since she's arrived that we actually are running at a deficit. Otherwise, we've had surpluses. I mean, isn't that a...
The 2010 year, and those are audited figures for 2010. The 2011 is the budgeted, the estimated budget amount. What we're saying is, if the budget is corrected according to what we've put forward, you can see that the fund balance would be 96 million with a deficit of 15.6 rather than 71 million with a deficit of 43 million.
And understand that the district has claimed they have a structural deficit, like the state. They've claimed that the costs are all necessary and would keep rising from where they are, while the revenues would not rise as quickly. We believe and we know that if the corrections are made, it's those corrections that would not be carried over in future years, and as a result, the structural deficit, the alleged structural deficit, would disappear.
To make sure I understand, you're saying that this school year, the one we're in, is budgeted in with a 75% increase in tenant.
That's correct.
And therefore, the 2012 projection is inflated.
This year's is inflated.
Because the costs are talking
yes.
about is for next school year, not
That's
not
right.
this school year.
That automatically, they start with that number and automatically inflate it to the next one. In fact, they did that, if you look at page 10, and we did not provide you with a copy of the budget that was used as the document that the board voted on last June. The document the board voted on last June claimed that the budget, that the benefits in 2009-10 was $116 million. If you take a look at where we've put this line here, they're claiming here that the actual benefits cost in 2010 was 107, but we have shown you the audited amount that came from the state, which says only 71 million. So the inflation that we're seeing here hides the existence of this big jump, but we could expect in the future for them to carry through the current year numbers as a way to maintain that structural
Did
deficit.
you give us the information from the audit?
The information from the audit,
It's the 71 million.
yes, 71 million
Did you give
on
us the page
page
from the
9.
audit that showed that?
The 2010-11 audit does not have a single page for that. You have to go through the benefits line for each of the funds and add it up, so I could not produce a single page.
Can we assume, let's assume that a forensic audit that may or may not be conducted determines what you are saying is correct and that the deficit is considerably less than what the administration is making it out to be. But there's still a deficit, and the state is still in financial chaos, and the economy is bad. do you think it would still be prudent for the union to accept wage and benefit concessions, including foregoing steps and lane increases, in the best interests of the community?
You know, Ken, we will start bargaining in April, and we have, as we did last year, when we looked at the situation and we said we felt it was in the best interest last year to roll our contract, we will look at everything. We're not unwilling to look at different things. Believe me, we will do that again. And as I said, are there things that can be done? I'm sure there are. But I am not willing to sit here and tell you that we will accept the idea of 8 or 11, or whatever that is, the number of buildings closed, and whatever the number, 500, 600 teachers being laid off or dismissed, and all that kind of stuff, with these kinds of bogus numbers.
These are your words, they manufactured a crisis to suit their own purposes.
Yes.
Those are fighting words,
You
obviously.
bet they are.
Given that, I mean, how are these negotiations going to play out? And is the administration trying to bust the union?
Oh,
Obvious.
That was a rhetorical question.
I think it is a rhetorical question, Ken.
And this is not about, this is about negotiations, but it's not.
It's much more than, it is much more than negotiations. It is much more than negotiations. This is about a viable, strong school system in Rockford, Illinois. This is about a school system that provides a good learning opportunity for all of its students. This is about having the programs necessary and the personnel necessary so that our kids can go on and do, whether it's college or whether it's out in the, can be productive citizens with it. Because if we're going to make these $50 million worth of cuts that the superintendent has proposed, we are going to destroy that system. And we are going to hurt the economy. If you think we've got a bad economy now, we're going to hurt the economy of this district, this city even more. And we need to realize that, and we need to look at this very, very closely.
Molly, how would you characterize Dr. Sheffield's decision about 10 days ago to release some additional cuts, to make public additional cuts through a district-wide email to put more pressure on the union to accept these concessions?
I think it's to put fear into the community, to put fear into the staff members.
Molly, has the district or have any of the school board members seen these new numbers yet? The ones that you guys have?
The district administration has not. We have emailed it to some of the school boards. All the school board members will get them tonight.
Would anyone care to speculate whether or not the errors that were pointed out today could be ascribed to gross incompetence in the budgetary system by the people who compiled this budget? Or do you think that perhaps there could be a more sinister agenda?
I think that's for the community to determine, not us.
So I think they should consider that.
But to be honest with you, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. Neither is acceptable.
Yeah.
Neither is
You're correct.
acceptable.
Just to piggyback on that, when you say they manufactured a financial crisis for their own purposes, what purposes? I mean, what is the point of doing that?
I think part of it does have to do with negotiations. They've been negotiating in the media. They've been negotiating through their administrators to the staff, since not just the teachers but the other unions have had their contracts up. So I think that that's a part of it.
I also think that Dr. Sheffield comes from a management school that believes in the necessity to destroy a system before building a system. And that this is her strategy to be able to restructure this district in her image.
Her idea of education reform.
When was the last time you guys called for such action?
For forensic audit, never. We've never done that before.
What's a realistic timetable for a forensic audit to be put into motion?
To be honest, I don't know, Ken. I really don't know.
A lot of community members, a lot of parents, very upset right now. You know, last night operations committee was packed, tonight at school board, it's going to be packed. If you could convey any message to them, what would you want them to know?
I would hope that the community would take a look at what we're saying and would also say to the school board, you need to do this and you need to do this as quickly as possible. You know, part of the, since this has come out, since the original recommendations came out, and you in the media have been asking me this from the start, who's been involved? Nobody has been allowed to see when you ask questions about how did you make this decision? What's the data that you used to decide this building's being closed? What is it that what are you using to determine that these are the numbers that you're going to have to lay off? You get no data. We were trying to provide for you where our information is coming from and how we're getting it. One of the biggest problems and one of the biggest frustrations we've had, and part of the reason it's taken us so long is that we have tried very hard to make sure our information is accurate and to make sure that we can back up what we say, and we have the data for it. But every time you ask them, show me the data, even the committee that put together the original recommendations couldn't take a piece of paper out of their committee meetings. I mean, you're so frustrated by the lack of information and the lack of data that you can get from them that it's very difficult to try and see where they're coming from. So this is the way we had to do it.
Given the establishment of the charters in the last couple of years and the excess capacity in some of the elementaries, do you think it stands to reason that some schools should be closed?
It may be, Ken. I mean, that's what we're saying. There may be excessives that and we're not saying that might not occur, but like I said, show me what data you use to say that this is the one that's going to be should be closed and why, and open it up so that stakeholders can actually be a part of the process, not after the fact. Here's what we're going to do. I mean, it's just should there cuts be made? Maybe for efficiency, but we definitely do not agree and do not believe that the extent to which it's been put out there is necessary. And once again, we would say that it will destroy this community's public education system.
These numbers are very complex. They're very difficult to understand.
They are.
And I think that's where the public, all of us, I'm sure, have tried to look at these numbers, and it's very difficult. Do you think that a forensic audit and outside, would that convey some sort of confidence of the numbers? Say the numbers come back somewhere in the middle, totally new numbers. Is that more trustworthy than numbers that any of us are punching or the district is punching?
I believe it would, yes,
Well,
very definitely.
I have to say is, you're talking about people out here like me, and I came here to find out about these numbers. And when you look at something that's so, first of all, I commend you for even getting these numbers, because I've been trying for months and months and months on my own to FOIA information that you never receive. And to have them even say to us, they're wanting a forensic audit because they want the people to understand that it's not them asking for this. We need a separate audience to tell us exactly what's real, because what they've shown us is the realest numbers I've seen. You don't ever see any numbers from their department. I've asked for information. You don't ever see anything from downtown. So from this administration, I have absolutely no faith right now. There's no confidence that I can even give them. And so the board either hasn't been doing their job, Levon's been fabricating numbers, but I have to say that a forensic audit is, to me, the only way we can go forward. And thank goodness they're even showing that as they want that to happen, I want that to happen, because I can't trust, as a taxpayer, what I'm being told, and from downtown. So,
But is the auditor somebody who would be mutually agreed upon by the administration, the board, and the union?
The independent auditor would be chosen by the board, or should be chosen by the board.
Would the Illinois Board of Education have any recommendations that they could choose from?
They might.
Because there could be organizations that do this.
Yeah,
There are organizations that do this.
And all of
focus on
the
this.
major accounting firms do this. It's a totally different, in-depth type of audit than the type of audit that's done on the annual basis, because its purpose is different. We don't think that there's any problem finding a reputable firm to do this, and we do think that it's the board's fiduciary responsibility to assure that the funds are being used properly to call for this.
Well, the errors of magnitude that you described today would cause any thinking person to reflect that what confidence can you place in any of the numbers that they're putting out? You have to call it into question. And as I said before, is it incompetence, or do they have something else in mind?
That's a good point. What, there's a $71 million error, you're saying? What's the error on the benefit amount?
The benefit amount error is 48 million, at least, plus or minus, because what we're doing is we're estimating based upon history to go up 7.9%. It could be that this year ends up 9%, or it could end up 6%. I don't know. But it's in the $45 to $50 million range.
And you're saying there was no change in benefits that would explain
No change in
that
benefits.
change?
No.
Correct.
And when it comes to benefits, all the contracts carried over from the previous year. Everybody did a carryover.
And these things you're mentioning would affect this year's deficits,
Yes.
not necessarily next year's.
Well, if you use the 78 and the 71 million as your starting point instead of 124 million as your starting point, which is what they would do next year, then you're affecting next year.
Correct this year's budget and next year's budget from what this year actually is before you go on to it, because otherwise you're already inflating everything, and that's where.
Do we know for a fact that they took the inflated numbers from last year, or this current year's budget, to build next year's budget? Because, as you said, you guys haven't been able to get a look at any of the actual numbers, right?
All we can tell you is the figures that we have gotten from the audited figures that have been turned into the state, and what they've got on this year's budget.
Yeah, we received when checking the information, when asking questions, when listening to what's said at the board, it's all been a moving target. But what we can say is that when we look at what they're talking about next year, and when we look at what they have in there this year that's uncorrected, it would be logical. It would be an appropriate arithmetic decision to say, yes, it's included.
Are there any other questions? If not, we thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you coming, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can give,
Thank you.
will you
We're wrapping up the extraordinary youth conference